All right, so welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about SMD components and why are they prevalent today. Today you can't find a device, or most likely you can't find a device with SMD components in them, which stands for surface mount devices. These devices make the projects or the final products smaller, cheaper to manufacture. Okay, fine, that's fine. But where does that leave you as a technician? If you don't have specialized tools, then you're not going to be able to work on this stuff. I mean, we're talking about things that are like the size of a human hair. It's, well, not quite that small, but pretty damn close. We're talking thousandths of an inch. These things are tiny, and if you don't have tweezers, microscopes, specialized soldering equipment, it's almost impossible to work on these things unless you're a younger person, because your eyes are typically a lot better. Mine are definitely not good, so I need any help I can get with optics. So with a soldering these things, you need a hot air rework station. Typically, you can use a soldering iron, but you have to be very careful, and you can only probably you can only do certain techniques with soldering irons. Otherwise, you need to use hot air if you're removing or replacing an IC. You're not going to be able to remove it with just a soldering iron. It's just will be it. You probably could if you sat there for hours trying to work at it, but it's probably going to be ugly and you wouldn't want to do it. You'd want a hot air rework station to heat the chip. You want to put flux on the IC, and you're going to want to remove the chip that way. And that's an extra thing now that you need. But good thing for you is that these soldering stations are becoming cheaper. You can get a soldering station with a hot air rework station built into it, and it's relatively cheap. Roughly around $200 you can get a decent setup. I've seen them on Amazon for $100 $150, and it's fine. I've had my hot air rework station in my lab for maybe close to 8 to 10 years. I think it's made by Xtronic, and it's been fine. It actually came with extra elements in it, and it's worked beautifully. I've never had to change the element in the soldering iron or the hot air rework station. I guess it all depends on how much you really use it. I mean, over the years I've used it a lot, and with the heating and cooling, it's been pretty solid. So the stuff is pretty decent. I can't speak for other stuff, but I've had good luck with my Xtronic hot air rework station with the soldering iron. I'm typically not using the soldering iron right now because I have a Hakko setup that gives me the ability to change out tips very quickly, and I have a dual station, so I can have two irons going with two different tips, so I don't have to keep switching. So it just saves a lot more time. So basically, I just wanted to make this video to get this through your mind that if you plan on working on SMD, I would start thinking about getting a hot air rework station and some other components or other test equipment that can work with this stuff. They have tweezer input cables that you can plug into your multimeter that you can measure devices with. If you ever try to stick regular probes onto an SMD device, the thing just flies off into space and you never see it again. It's just impossible. But yeah, so it's tough right now. If you got to work on this stuff, and you got to read the numbers on the resistors, and you got to figure out it's not color coded like it used to be. It's got a number that corresponds to the code, the resistance of the value of the resistor. So it's a little bit different. It's not hard. It's really easy. So yeah, I just wanted to get this through your mind that you're not going to be able to do a lot of repairs with newer stuff if you're still working with just a soldering iron. I mean, you can work on some of the older receivers, no problem. All the older gear, larger power supply sections, like even TV power supplies, you're going to still be able to work on that stuff. But you might find some crossbreeds between through-hole and surface mount, so don't be surprised if you see that. It's becoming common too. Most likely you'll see some of the through-hole stuff in the high heat areas of the circuit board because they want to dissipate the heat. It's cheaper. These smaller components can't dissipate the amount of heat that these through-hole components can, so they can get away with using these larger components because they have more current capabilities to deal with the load of the power supply. So you'll still be able to work on that stuff, but if you're looking at repairing or working on HDMI boards or something that has a lot of surface mount stuff, I mean, I've seen some stuff from the late 90s that had surface mount in it. So I mean, this stuff's been around for a long time. It's just becoming more and more and more common. So it's just something to look out for beginners that are getting into this. They're opening up their projects or a device that they're looking to repair, and they're saying to themselves, I can't even see this stuff. How am I supposed to work on it? Well, yeah, that's the whole point. In schematics with SMD, if you don't have a schematic and you're working on an SMD board, you're going to go bald quick. It's just a fact. Luckily, I haven't. But it gets a little difficult. You have to be very careful. I would suggest that you just don't get overwhelmed by it. If you just get yourself a pair of optics. I think that's the first thing. I started off with just regular eye loops, just little things that you put up to your eye, like 5X or 10X. You can get these from Harbor Freight. They're not the best quality by any means, but they're cheap. I think it was like $5 or $3 for a set of 5 of them. And you can even stack them together. It's not great. It's kind of a pain. You got to hold it and you got to kind of crunch it in your eye, but hey, it'll get you by. You'll be able to see the components. So you can do that, or you can use the ones that the dentists use, as they're just little glasses with. They actually have 2 loops on them. Those you can probably find for about $30 or so, roughly. I would say about $30. You can get like a 3.5X or something like that, and you can wear them. The only problem is if you get too high of a magnification, the image will get darker, and if the image gets darker, you're going to be harder to see. You're going to need more light, so you're going to have to either get less magnification or more light. So that's how the optics work. Even the microscopes work that way too. You ever see the ring light on the bottom of a microscope? That is because it needs extra light. Because of the magnification, it steals light. You're focusing on such a small spot. There's not much of illumination in that one spot opposed to an overall image or a picture. When you zoom into something, it loses light, so you need a lot more illumination. That's one tip for you if you actually get a microscope for the first time. You're going to need a ring light with it. Absolutely, no doubt. And you're going to need one that switches channels so you can shut off quadrants of light, because you sometimes can get reflections on circuit boards. And if you have the light hitting the solder pads or the solder on the backside of the board, you will actually have a hard time seeing it, because it will be reflecting light back from the solder into the microscope, causing kind of a refraction issue. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it will actually make the image a little bit more dull or harder to see. So you'll have to shut off a quadrant of LEDs to change the way the light's hitting the circuit board to be able to see it correctly to solder it. So yeah, that's some microscope tips. I would suggest, if you're going to get a microscope, Amscope or microscope.com, those are great beginner microscopes. I have one. I've had both. I've had Amscope, and I've had the ones from microscope.com, Omanos, I think they're called. I've had them both. They're both beautiful. If you're going to get a camera for your microscope, you're going to want to get something that you can see both eyes through. They actually have ones, don't be fooled, that you can actually, it steals one eye from you if you use the camera port. So make sure it's, I forget, the bilateral or something. I forget the correct terminology for it, but you're going to want something that you can actually see both eyes through, because you don't want to just be soldering one eye and have one blocked off because you have a camera if you're using a camera. Some of you may not even need a camera and don't even use that port anyway, so it won't matter. All right, so that's all I wanted to talk to you about tonight. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see some more content, hit the subscribe button and notification button, and you'll be emailed with new uploads. If there's anything I didn't cover or you'd like me to try and cover, or other topics, just drop something in the comments below, and maybe we'll make a new video for that, and we'll see what happens. So I hope you have a good night. We'll see you in the next one.